Okay, welcome to this video on learning, teaching, and technology. I'm going to do these 3 videos in this set. One is about what is learning, and then we're going to have one called learning, teaching, and pedagogy, and finally what technology is and how that connects. So to start with, what is learning? I want to know what you think, all right? You have a lot of experience in life, personal experiences, education, reading, observing the world. What do you think learning is? So in a minute, I'm going to have you write out your answer to this sentence. Learning is blank. But here's some questions to consider first. What have you learned today? How do we know when we have learned? What triggers learning? Where and how do you learn? And then you can think of different types of people and how they might learn, like scientists, artists, teachers, parents. How do you learn to be a parent? And then this question, do you have to have a teacher to learn? All right? So what you're going to do is for 3 minutes, you're going to complete this sentence. Learning is blank. And you can, if you get stuck, just go back to learning is and then write some answer. You can even write learning is I don't know. The idea is to keep writing or thinking or doing. So there's a lot of ways to do this. You can free write, handwrite, or type. You can do walk and talk, where you actually kind of walk around and just talk it out. You might want to record yourself, or you might just want to write notes after you finish. You can also just draw things. You can put things on Post-it notes. You can do whatever you want to help you work out this idea that what is learning? Learning is blank. All right? So I'm going to put these questions back on the screen so you can start a timer for 3 minutes and go. Okay, so what is learning? Think about the summary if you were to put together a synthesis of what you're thinking about. Here's some different definitions by different scholars. So first are some changes in behavior. We're talking about a permanent change in behavior that occurs as a result of practice. All right, this is an older definition, and it's very much like behaviorism. So it might be something like this. Here's my cat.
Good job.
My cat learned to ring a doorbell when she wants to go inside, as long as I'm standing next to the door. She has not quite learned how to do it when I'm not standing outside next to her. But you can see that we practiced that for a while, and it resulted in something new she's doing. So you have to think about whether or not you think that is learning. Another perspective is information and knowledge, and this is more of a cognitivism perspective. So we talk about the process of information input and storage. But Corte also has, on the other hand, is a product which changes in the behavior of an animal due to experience. So we put together those two, process information and change in behavior. This one by Candle is process by which we acquire knowledge. Memory is the process by which that knowledge is encoded, stored, and later retrieved. So that sounds a lot like a computer, right? These are cognitivism thoughts. We're putting some things in our head, we're storing them. That's another way to think about learning. Taxonomy. So this is McQueen's and Holmes' acquisition of structural descriptions from examples. Forming general concept definitions by observing specific examples. And I just call this a taxonomy because it's kind of like you're learning how different things are structured. So right now I'm showing you different types of definitions of learning to help you understand the general concept. Here's another one. This is from Wenger, and Lev and Wenger are famous for their theory called legitimate peripheral participation. All you need to know about it right now is that they look at learning as a social activity. So they compare it to apprenticeship. Like if you were learning to be a shoemaker, you might work in the shoemaking shop, starting with just sweeping the floors. And then gradually you would do more and more skilled tasks until you became a master shoemaker. So you're learning as you go in a community. So they actually consider becoming part of a community as learning. Becoming an identity, learning as experience, developing meaning, and doing as practice. So that's another way to think of learning. So you can see from all these ways, there's a lot of different metaphors. And what I mean by metaphor is we're taking words and we're putting something physical into something that is not really physical. So for example, when we talk about acquire knowledge, what is this knowledge that we acquire? The words we use for acquire, store, get, those sound like we're doing something physical, right? Even though it's not physical. So that's a metaphor. Another is like when we talk about storing knowledge, storing information, are we like putting things, some mysterious object in our head? It's just a metaphor. It doesn't mean that it's a bad thing, but it's a metaphor for something. So here's some different metaphors for learning. I'm just going to briefly talk about these. We have like epistemological, so that's kind of like knowledge as objects, mind as a container. We're receiving knowledge. That's putting that concreteness into knowledge. We have construction, where we're putting things together. We have coaching. We have acquisition, interaction, persuasion, and then things like growth, creative construction, a teacher as a performer. Those are all different metaphors about learning. Okay, so we can also think about teaching and learning phrases or metaphors by putting them into different groups. So we can think of acquisition metaphor, where we're gaining or taking in something and the teacher's going to give knowledge. Or we can talk about a participation metaphor, where we're discovering knowledge and it's a process resulting in some type of change. We're becoming something. So Anna Svard compared these two, acquisition and participation, as metaphors for learning, and argued that it's good to have both metaphors, showing us that we can have multiple definitions for something. Instead of a limitation, it actually helps us to understand something. It's like looking at different angles of the same picture or the same object. The different angles help us understand it better. So now we need to add to this teaching and pedagogy. So when we talk about teaching, what is teaching? Here's some questions to consider. The difference between teaching and learning, what conditions can support learning, what do the most effective teachers do? What does it mean to be an effective teacher? What do you have to know to be a teacher? How is a teacher different from a friend or parent? So we're going to write about this, what a teacher is, blank, for 3 minutes, just like we did about learning, and then write a summary. Okay, one more term, pedagogy. So pedagogy is about the method and practice of teaching. So to understand teaching, we have to think about how does learning happen? What types of thoughts do people have? What things do they misunderstand and then correct? What's a good sequence for things? And then how do we encourage, foster, or support that learning? What can a teacher do to bring students along and support learning? All right. Okay, so that is learning, teaching, and pedagogy. And next up, we'll talk about technology and how it fits in this.